Well, as I continue my series on Bruce Wilkerson's book entitled Secrets of the Vine, which is based on the text in John 15, Jesus' last words to his disciple, one of the realities is there's so much wisdom just in this particular text about abiding in the Lord and remaining in him, using the image of the vineyard and the pruning of the branches, that there's a lot to share about this. In this particular section, Bruce shares the story about how he and his wife, Darlene, moved the family out to the country. And the reason why they did that was they needed to slow down. Their lives were so busy and there was so much going on that they decided to go into the country for a break. He shares about walking over to his neighbor to say hi, and all around his neighbor was a huge group of grape leaves, a heap of them, grape branches. And Bruce mentioned to his neighbor, well, I guess you don't like grapes. And the neighbor replied, I love them, he said. We can either have a lot of beautiful leaves on these branches or have the biggest, juiciest, sweetest grapes that you've ever seen. It's just that you can't have both. And so there's some country wisdom in just a couple of sentences. Obviously, this farmer, this neighbors of Bruce, had lived in the country a long time and knew what he was doing in terms of what he needed in order to get the best possible grapes that he could have. And the reality that he shares with us is a reality that we often face in our own lives. We need to make choices in our lives, and sometimes difficult choices. And basically, in this particular story, what the farmer shared with Bruce was you have to choose between a bush that looks really nice with a lot of leaves or a vine that has a lot of really great grapes on it that you can eat and enjoy as the fruit. You just can't have both. And often in our lives, we don't want to make the choice, do we? We want to have both. And what ends up happening is we really end up with neither. And often in our lives, God is inviting us to make a choice that we can have something really great and wonderful and fruitful and astounding. But that means something else has to be cut away. And so in this particular part of the story, Bruce shares the reality with the question, what does God do with somewhat fruitful branches? What does he do with people's lives that are bearing some degree of fruit, but God wants more fruit from them? Well, in John 15, Jesus shares that every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. And so what we hear in the story in John is the reality that the vine dresser, the Father, notices that some of our lives are bearing some fruit. And God's happy about that. God rejoices when a life bears fruit. But God wants more fruit from your life and from my life. Like any vine dresser, like anybody that has a vineyard or a property, we always want it to produce more. And in order for a vine to produce more, some of the branches need to be cut away. Some of the leaves need to be pruned in order for that to happen. Pruning means to reduce, to thin, or to cut off. And it's the vine dresser's secret for more is less. It doesn't make sense to us, does it? It's the last thing that we want to do in our lives, or sometimes we want to see to happen in somebody else's life. If you were to come to our house right now, there's a particular plant that Janet is fond of that really grows big in the coming months. But right now, if you were to go by that plant, it looks like it's about ready to die. Everything's been pruned away. It's been cut back to the stubs, and it doesn't look that great, actually. But if you come over a few months from now, it'll be bursting forth with all kinds of leaves and growth and fruit and all kinds of stuff. And it's because she took the time to prune it. And so the second secret of the vine is simply this. If your life bears some fruit, God will intervene to prune you. And invariably, pruning is not a pleasant experience. When God cuts away certain parts of your life because you're bearing some fruit, you might be wondering, God, why are you doing that to me? Why are you pruning this relationship in my life or this particular thing I'm going through? Why are you doing this to me? I'm bearing some fruit for you. Aren't you happy? And the reality is God prunes back certain areas of our lives because there is some fruit, and God wants more fruit. So pruning is actually a good sign. The vine dresser's goal when he prunes is, first of all, to remove growth that is dead or dying. Have you ever seen a tree that has, or plant, that has some healthy green vines or branches, but then there's another part of it that's dying, and you can see that it's dying? Well, what you would do if you work with plants is you'd get rid of that dead part because you realize it doesn't belong on the plant anymore or on the tree. It's taking up space, it's using valuable nutrients, and you need to get rid of it. Guess what? There are parts of your life and my life that are dying or dead. Usually an area of sin. It might be a relationship. It might be something that you've been doing for years. But spiritually speaking, it's a dying part of you, or it's dead, and it's something that God wants to get rid of. In fact, God has been speaking to you that he wants you to get rid of it. He wants you to stop doing that because it's sinful, because it takes away from your spiritual life. It takes energy, and it's taking away from your fruitfulness. And so that's one of the things that the vine dresser does in pruning. Also, the vine dresser in pruning makes sure sunlight can get to the fruit-bearing branches to increase the size and quality of the fruit and encourage new fruit to develop. So one of the things you and I need to realize is that if God is pruning our lives in some way, shape, or form, that God is doing it for good. It's a positive thing. And the other thing you need to realize is that one of the ways you'll notice that God is pruning your life is that you won't like it. You will not like it. It will not be enjoyable to you. You will notice that God is cutting away someone or something in your life, and you will probably get upset at God about it. But it is actually a good sign. It is a good thing because ultimately God is going to bring forth growth. Wilkerson writes, in pruning, God asks you to let go of things or people that keep you from his kingdom purposes and your ultimate good. That's what God is doing in the pruning of your life. That is why he is cutting away that relationship or relationships or that group of people that you've always hung out with, or those things in your life that you valued for so long. Maybe you don't have an interest in them anymore, or maybe you're not able to afford them anymore, or maybe you're just convicted you shouldn't be doing that anymore. That's a pruning that's going on in your life. Maybe another way in which God is pruning your life is that you're too busy. Even for many of you who are retired, as I listen to your schedules, like you, I'm kind of surprised that you're retired. It's almost like you're as busy as you were before you stopped working. And sometimes when our lives get so busy, what God has to do is he has to prune back our activities so that we could have a little bit more time in our lives to relax and enjoy life. Guess what? Listen to me on this. God doesn't want you to be busy all the time. Let me say it again. God doesn't want you to be busy all the time. But Father Joe, I get bored if I don't do anything. I don't know what to do with myself. Let me say it one more time. God doesn't want you to be busy all the time. And if you are constantly filling your schedule with relationships or activities or commitments because you have a hard time being quiet and being still and just relaxing and enjoying life, there is something wrong. There is something wrong with your spiritual life. Either you're trying to hide something, you're trying not to face something, and that's not good. You know, life needs to have a series of being busy, but also of rest. That's why we work during the day, and ideally at night we sleep, because there's a balance to life. There needs to be activity, and there needs to be downtime and rest. And that's not watching TV or occupying yourself with games or doing 20 million other things that are on your to-do list. You need to take a break and rest. And that might be a reason why God is pruning away some of the things that you're doing in your life. Also, another sign of pruning is that maybe there's a dream that keeps coming back to you. There's a desire in your heart that just won't go away. A desire for something new, or a desire for something different, or a desire to go somewhere and travel someplace, or an image or a day vision or a dream that just keeps coming to mind or continues to be on your heart. That may be a sign of fruit that God wants to bring forth in your life. And what you're busy doing is you're saying, you know what, I'm too busy with all these other things to attend to that. There's no way I can ever do that because I'm too busy with all of these other things. Hello, guess what? Maybe one of the things that God's trying to do is he's trying to prune away these other things, and he wants you to begin to move in this area of the dream or the vision or the hope or the desire that you have. That's a new area of fruit that God wants to bring forth. The other thing I'll say about pruning is this, from personal experience, that I didn't like very much. And it's the reason why I'm sharing it with you, because I'm almost convinced you're not going to like it either. When God has pruned someone or something from your life, especially when you really had no control over it and God really pruned it away from you, you're going to automatically want to fill it with someone or something to make up the time. Don't do that. I know you hate to hear this. I just know it. Don't do that. But take the time to be still, to pray, to reflect, to dream, to consider, to walk the beach a little bit more or go to the Everglades and walk around a little bit more. Take some more time for reflection and prayer and rest and calm and dreaming and visioning, and give yourself time and give God time to bring someone or something back into your life that is meant to be. And then, and only then, will you experience the greater fruitfulness that God has for you. Human beings invariably make the mistake that when God prunes someone or something out of their life, and you know what I'm talking about because you're at the point in your life where you've had this experience a number of times, the invariable mistake that people make is they automatically try to find something to fill the time. Don't do that, please. Don't do that. Allow yourself the time and allow God the time to speak to you, to minister to you, to guide and lead you in the direction that he wants you to go in the area that he's calling you to be more fruitful in. If you and I will take the time to do that and allow his Spirit to guide and lead us, your life and my life will be fruitful, more and more and more fruitful, exactly in the areas that God wants to bring forth fruitfulness in your life. Guess what? You just have to wait a little while for it to happen. But you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait because it's a process and it takes time. There's a healing with that and a grace with that and a birthing that will come forth, but it comes forth from God. You can have a lot of leaves. You can have a really, really beautiful bush. Or you can have some of the greatest, juiciest, wonderful, abundant harvest of grapes, more than you can even begin to imagine. But you're going to have to choose, because you just can't have both. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.